In this episode, I discuss the merits of using money as a proxy for human value. Welcome to Monologues by Hassie. Humans in tribes naturally tried to rank each other, and I see this in every tribe I'm part of. When I'm in Run Club, people will compete based on how fast you're going, how long you're going. It's very standard. I remember my first time in Run Club, somebody asked me, "What's your pace?" And they deduced, "That's pretty slow." And I thought to myself, great. And different people have different metrics on how they rank themselves and those around them. But in our society, I think there's one common metric which everything boils down to, and it is how much money a person earns or how much money a person has. And there's a good reason for this. If we look at all these different subgroups, there is one thing that everything converges in our society, is that for the most part, in not just Western society, but societies beyond us, there is a need to transact with other humans, and to do that, we need money. And I don't think this is unique to the West, as I say. I think this exists in any culture that has had a form of money that can be stored, that doesn't expire, be it dollars or seashells, is that it leads to accumulation. And people use this as a proxy for human value. Now, there's a reason this happens. I think it is very hard, like I was giving that Run Club example, where maybe it's your pace or your distance that gets measured. When you meet somebody and you don't know them too closely, even if you knew somebody closely, it's very hard to tell, and I'm learning this all the time, it's very hard to tell if somebody is happy, whether they are healthy, no matter how they look, whether they have good relationships with their colleagues, with their parents, with their children, with their spouse, their partner. It is very hard to measure all these things about a person. And so for a lot of people, money becomes their measuring stick. And it's less about the other people, it's more about the internal desire to find where somebody is in the tribe. And this is how people derive a lot of value. As humans, if you feel like you are at the top of the tribe naturally, or towards the top of the tribe, there are feelings of comfort. I think this is a very natural, normal thing. It is hard to detach from this. But beyond having money for our basic needs, this is where it becomes a measuring stick. I often get questions, how much do you earn? How much do you have? And you can see that the reason these questions are asked, generally it's less of a point of curiosity, and more often it is a desire to do this ranking process, to derive human value from currency. Now, at a certain level, money can be correlated to the effort somebody puts into something, their intellect, the energy they've invested, and what the markets or what other people have deemed they are worth to be paid. But that doesn't always happen. We live in a far more complex economic system, and we do not live in a world where somebody is farming and they're exchanging their wheat with somebody's goats. Our world has become far more complex than this. And so money is really a very, very lazy measuring stick. Now, I'm not saying that I don't want money. Of course I want money. I'm not a monk. I haven't renounced worldly possessions. And I think it's really important to actually talk about money. For example, you might want to ask about somebody's salary if you are trying to determine whether you need to be paid more or whether you need to seek compensation. That type of price discovery can be very important when you are participating in a market. But besides the practical reasons of knowing what other people have and what other people earn, the dangerous game is believing that this is human value. It really isn't. And I am privileged enough to live in a Western country and earn in Australian dollars, which are okay, sure. Australians might complain that our currency is falling, and it's not as strong as it used to be. But that's besides the point. I'm incredibly privileged to be where I am and to be able to earn the way I can earn. And it's not to say I don't want to increase that. But at the same time, I know that this does not make me better than somebody else. And if I do think it makes me better at somebody else, I probably need a good slap across the face and a reminder that money is a really, really, really poor proxy for human value, because I know it doesn't reflect somebody's health, their happiness, their relationships, and the other things that they might consider important. Somebody's value could come from their creativity, from their charity, which isn't always money bound, right? And I think that's something that's important. A lot of times we see these big philanthropist movements. Somebody donates a vast sum of money, and that's a wonderful thing. We should encourage that because, for example, if we had a society where your status was derived from the amount of money you donated to charity versus, the size of your yacht or how expensive your car is, we probably would live in a very different world if that was the status metric. So if status was driven by charity, it'd be a very different world. But I think the important thing to recognize is that there are people who contribute and do charity by volunteering. And they don't have a lot of money themselves, but they're giving up their time. And if you look at how a lot of volunteer-run organizations work, that value is not remunerated. No one really pays for it. It is somebody donating their time. And aggregated amongst many volunteers, people are able to do wonderful things in our world. And so I'm not quite sure what I'm trying to get with this podcast, but it was just a thought I've been having that so much of what we do and the way we question each other is less about the utility of income and wealth. So I think it's really important to have those conversations. If, for example, you are about to engage in a salary negotiation, or you just want to know whether you should find a new job, that's important. Or if you're thinking about creating a business because you desire more money for certain things that you find important, there's nothing inherently wrong with wanting a Bentley or a yacht. And in that case, it might make sense to ask somebody how they're accumulating your wealth. But often people aren't asking the hows. They're not asking the methodology. They simply want to know what somebody else is making so they can determine how they feel about themselves relative to that person. And that I don't think is particularly helpful, but it is so common. So my prompt for those of you who are listening to this is notice both within yourself and questions you've asked in the past and questions that are being asked of you or the people around you. When money comes up, is it being used as a proxy for human value, or does it have a more utilitarian purpose? Is it being used to help a salary negotiation or somebody start a business? And observe, how does that make you feel? What does that make you think? Are there other ways to measure humans? And not to say that we should be measured, but if you are measuring people, is there a better metric that you could be measuring them by? And so with this, I will end this episode here, and I wish those of you listening to this great success on all your endeavors. You've just made it through another episode of Monologues by Hassie. It brings me great pleasure to know that you made it to the end. To listen to more episodes, subscribe on your favorite podcast app or visit monologuesbyhassie.com. Thanks for swinging by.